What's going on, everybody? It's a good 48 hours later from the debacle on Sunday, and I still don't feel any better. A little bit of change in programming. It was supposed to be me and Bash tonight at 10 p.m. He was under the weather, so I switched up, and we got Al from 49ers Plus Pod. I think it's a pretty damn good replacement. I'm looking forward to the discussion. We were talking a little bit offline, so there's a ton to talk about. But I want to get your opinion right off the bat without trying to be clever with an intro. Just your overall feeling 2 days later of what we saw on Sunday. Are you feeling better? Are you feeling worse? Are you kind of flatlined and pretty much nothing's changed?
You know what? Honestly, I'm the same. I mean, I think the thing that hurt the most was the Seahawks beating Atlanta, pretty handily to go up by a game in the division. But we were just talking before the stream started. The way that the roster deteriorated, 48 hours before the game, we hear that Jennings is out. Debo tries 4 snaps. He's done. Ayuk's done mid first quarter. At that point, I had no illusions that the Niners were going to win that game. They teased us 14-6 at the half, 1 possession, 14-12 in the third quarter. Carlson misses the extra point, 21-12. They're driving. Brock gets hit, throws another pick. Yeah, 28-12, and they get a late score to make it a 10-point game. But for me, it came back to, which I talked about on my show yesterday, was if this offense at 100% struggles against Steve Spagnuolo, struggles against what the Ravens do, something comparable, then why the hell are any of us upset that they lost with their top 3 receivers out and McCaffrey out? Right? Like, this game went the way it should have given the losses. And I know the Chiefs have some losses too. That's fine. But or do we really think, a depleted Chiefs offense against the Niners D with Sorensen and missing Hargrave and Hufanga and Greenlaw, maybe that's a wash. But a depleted Niners offense against a Spagnuolo-led defense at basically 100%, zero chance. Zero.
I didn't look at it like that. I'm starting to now as you're talking me into it. Because a lot when you watch, listen, you watch the game, right? And like, all the talk is, well, if Purdy's the guy that we say he is, and if he's going to make 60 million, good quarterbacks have to learn to overcome all these obstacles. They have, there's times when Brady is won without his top guys, and Mahomes is winning without his top guys. And so when you start to kind of listen to that stuff, and then you watch the game, you're like, well, I mean, hey, if they're, I really like Purdy, and maybe they're right. Maybe we need to pump the brakes on Purdy, and you start letting your mind go certain places. Personally, I think what you say now that I'm listening to it is probably making the most sense, but I feel like this was a loss across the board.
Oh, yeah.
Defense played pretty good for a while. If we're just doing a real quick recap before we hit any topics, but just the special, I talked about this with you and other people, like the special teams being as bad as it is, those kind of things always pop up against good teams. And like, this whole thing of like, well, if the Niners go on a run and they're a wild card team, like, are you really all that excited knowing that all these issues still exist and that at some point, maybe in their wild card game that they might make, they get eliminated in the first round because all these issues that they're dealing with right now have not been fixed and haven't been dealt with? And say we sneak into the playoffs just based on attrition from other teams. Do you really expect to go anywhere? Do you really want that kind of season? Or would you rather have a season where they figure crap out and they go on a run and then they just happen to lose to, say, a hot Lions team or Packers or Vikings? I would be more accepting than never fixing anything, barely sneaking in and then being like, hey, we lost. Guess what? Our special teams gave up a huge return. Our defense was leaky against the run once again. They couldn't contain a mobile quarterback. Like, all those things haven't been fixed. So,
well, I don't think it could happen. I don't think they could sneak in without fixing what you're saying. Like, I think that's impossible. The way the schedule is going to break in the second half. I mean, they have some game. They're going to be favored in the majority of their games. They won't be favored at Green Bay. They won't be favored at Buffalo. They might be favored everywhere else. And who knows what that Detroit game is going to look like in December. And we were talking before the stream started. Look at and I hate to use the word break, but look at the break that they're catching against the Bucs with both receivers now done. Godwin done for the year. Evans done until week 11. So their defense catches a little bit, of a break there, but they can't get to 9 wins. They can't get to their 10-win ceiling, which is still a possibility. I don't think they're going to get there, but that's their ceiling. They can't get there without fixing stuff. They can't get there without getting more aggressive, playing better run defense, getting more pressure on the quarterback, and this was their worst game offensively, and it was kudos to the Chiefs. I mean, Spagnuolo, there are certain coaches, Spagnuolo and Flores and Schwartz, that have Kyle's number. It's not the worst. It's not like every coach or every other game the past 6 years, Kyle has struggled. There's certain schemes and defenses that he struggles against. Last year, Cleveland was number 1 in the league. Is it a crime to struggle against the number 1 defense in the league? Flores sending blitzes. The O-line has trouble with that. The O-line kept Brock pretty clean, right? Like 1 sack. The O-line only allowed, I think, 6 pressures total. But of course, some of their misses were like of the Three Stooges variety, where you had, a tight end and a guard coming to the left, and they both missed. I think it was Karlaftis, and that's when Purdy got sacked. I agree with you. If they're not going to clean things up, they're not going anywhere. And while a wild card 9-8, 10-7 season, or maybe making into the divisional round isn't what all of us were hoping for, the way the season's played out, all things considered, injuries, illness for Debo, new coordinator, new players, it's understandable to a point, but would still be a welcome January for us. Listen, 1 or 2 more Niner games is better than 1 or 2 less Niner games, right? Like, I don't think they don't look like a Super Bowl team right now, but they roll off, say, the next 3, and of course, the narrative is going to change everywhere about what's possible for this team. So it's a week by week league. We just this one looked bad, but so did Mahomes.
Oh, it's to me, my optimism is really low because I just see these flaws that have not been addressed, and I don't know. I talked about this off stream with you. Like, body language is really important to me. I don't know if because I have OCD and anxiety and all depression and ADHD and all that stuff. Like, I pay attention a lot to people's body language, even in real life, to get a read on people. And you just listen to those press conference, and it's just like it feels like the wind is gone, and people keep saying, well, could it have affected this team? And did the Chiefs have their number? And, the players and the coaches tell you, that's not the case. And, it's just another game, blah, blah, blah. But until they beat the Chiefs, I mean, how can you argue against any of that? And then just watch the post-game press conferences with Bosa. Listless. Doesn't seem like he has too much to say. Warner, I don't get a lot of encouraging vibes from him. Even Brock.
Mm-hmm.
Kittle is not his normal self in the press conferences. I'm kind of sick of hearing the antidotes like, well, if you don't do this right, you don't do this right, you're not going to beat good teams. And I'm thinking, well, then can figure it out then.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I'm sick of hearing, like, we got all, like, one of the famous John Lynch lines that he always says is, we think we have everything that we need right in our building, right? That's always like, he says that every year. Do you truly believe that this year? Because I don't. I don't think that they will have what they need in the building, even if they made a trade and they were having a decent second half of the season. I just don't feel like this team, mentality wise, not even just the physical part, just the mentals, like the optics, when you like listen to guys and you watch body language, like, where's the passion on the sideline? Where's guys getting up in each other's faces and having to be separated? Like Jerry Rice said, if this was the Niners teams of old and this kind of garbage was going on, people would have probably threw punches. And people are like, well, that's not productive. I think it is. I think it needs to come out. I think frustration is good because it shows that you give a damn. I don't know, man. Like, watch, like, it just really feels like they're checked out. And maybe that's just me because I'm a negative by nature person, but I don't know.
They need someone to rally the troops. That's where someone like a Robert Saleh, a Mike Singletary, that's not, I don't think, I haven't seen Sorensen on the sidelines. They're obviously, Saleh was getting a lot of the screen time because of how animated he was when he was the DC. And the same thing with Ryans. And last year, little bit different in terms of the vibe there. But yeah, I think that it is emotionally draining on them, because as much as they're saying the right things, and they're not wrong. Like, you're not going to win games if you don't do X, Y, and Z, and fill in. And it's probably more than X, Y, and Z. It might be the whole alphabet at this point. So they're not wrong, but they're also doing the same thing. They're not cleaning things up. Special teams is still a mess. And, the things that I thought the Niners had to do, there was, I think, 5 of them. They failed on all of them. It's, run it more than 30 times, throw it less than 30. Nope. Hold the Chiefs under $125 rushing. Nope. They went for $184. Win the turnover battle. No, but you could say that was even, because even though the NFL doesn't count a turnover on downs as a turnover, it's a turnover to me. They were attempting to go for a first down. The Niners stuffed them. Like, if it was a 4th down interception or fumble, that counts as a turnover. I don't buy that so much. So turnovers relatively even. Win the turnover time of possession battle. Nope. Lost it by 10 minutes. Play clean penalty wise. Penalties weren't terrible. I think they were only 6 for 40, but the times when they came, the first drive on Brendel, when Mason had like an 8-yard run, that second down stop on a screen pass, and Bosa was lined up off sides. Like, they everything about what the team does is untimely. I mean, Christ, even Debo's illness. I don't want to say why couldn't he get sick Sunday night, but how often do you hear about, and pneumonia is a serious thing. I'm not, trivializing.
I think we were all a little bit like, really, dude, you can't tough it out. I felt that way, and then I found out, and I felt different.
Yeah, no, it's super legit, but it's kind of one of those, like, we hear about Jennings, you hear about Debo, and then Ayuk happens. It's almost like the football gods are saying, no, Niners, you cannot have an advantageous matchup with the Chiefs. Now, Juju Smith-Schuster got knocked out, so technically they're missing 3 of their top 4 receivers. Niners are missing their top 3, so maybe it's a wash. But my God, like, there was no chance for the Niners to even flex on the Chiefs with who they went into the week with. But when it was all said and done, I still maintain the Niners preseason offense, essentially, against a full 95% healthy Steve Spagnuolo-led defense, 0 shot. And as depleted as the Chiefs were, it's still Andy Reid against Nick Sorensen. Not really much of a matchup. Now, they played great against Mahomes, held them, under like 160 yards. They got the 2 interceptions, but they got ran through, especially in the second half, and especially when they knew the Chiefs were going to run. They got ran through. That is a problem.
I am a person who thinks that complacency has a lot to do with why teams struggle against other teams, or maybe the fact that they don't take care of things or address things. Even in the success that we've had probably since 2019, the one thing that I've always had an issue with was the wide 9 and the cover 3 Seattle defense that we are so committed to running, that hasn't produced a championship. And it always, I don't know, like, you watch games and like the way the teams gouge us, it's always kind of similar. And they run like Chris Kasarik, everybody applauds him like he's this super big guru of pass rush, and he does all this other stuff. But like, the wide 9 to me is not conducive to stopping the run. I think the cover 3 defense, when you play against teams that have good quarterbacks, I think they eat that apart with the zone. I think the Niners have been so complacent of keeping that same defense because, well, hey, it gets us close, and never seem to ever have the mindset that maybe we go outside the building and go with something that we've never done before. And who cares if the players aren't all down for it? I'm so sick of hearing like that they don't want to upset the apple cart crap. Like, it's why? It's obvious what you're doing isn't working. And people could say, well, they've been really good. Yeah, but like when they needed to do something, when they needed it, that defense, this lauded defense that we talk about with Chris Kasarik, wide 9 pass rush, they come up small consistently. So,
and I don't think that they wouldn't be a fan of it. I mean, if it's something like they want to change their 4-3 or their base 4-3 wide 9 to a 3-4 or something drastically different, I wouldn't be a fan of that. I mean, look at Philadelphia. Other than beating up on the Giants 28-3, you bring Vic Fangio in, you thought that would be an immediate upgrade to the defense, and they've been mediocre or bad every game except against the Giants. I think there does need to be an evolution of the defense where you have a bit more pressure, better blitz packages, better stunts, better ways to get to the quarterback. I mean, they were playing the Chiefs. They had the same defensive alignment when they were inside their own 10 or inside their own 5 as if they were playing defense when the Chiefs were on their own 20. They were not getting away from their 4-man line, 3 linebackers, bringing Devondre Campbell in, their safeties and corners, or if they went to a nickel, whatever. What I'm getting at is they did not go heavy on the D-line literally at all game. The Chiefs opened the game, the first series, and I was paying attention to it, with 5 or 6 on the line. It could have been 4 D linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 D linemen, 1 linebacker, whatever it was. But that's the formation that gives the Niners trouble running the ball, and they had trouble running the ball in the first half. It's amazing how when you have someone like Kyle Shanahan, who, regardless of struggling against certain coaches, he is an offensive genius. He is. But it's amazing how when his prolific offense is faced with a formation that they can't beat or they have trouble with, let's just say 5 defensive linemen for argument's sake, that they don't employ it themselves. They were getting gashed defensively. There was no change. And I don't want to hear, well, maybe they were run blitzing or whatever. The Chiefs imposed their will in the second half, specifically mid-third and fourth quarter, running the ball, and Sorensen did nothing personnel-wise to change it. They have to do something defensively to look at their scheme, and the same thing offensively moving forward. If Deebo's out again, if Jennings is out again, obviously Ayuk's done, and we'll talk about wide receiver trade possibilities, I'm sure. Where are the man beaters? Where are the pick plays? Where are the crosses? Where are the screen passes? I think to date, the only screen pass was run to Juice last week at Seattle, and he lost 4 yards. Where are the easy gets for Brock? And it could have been Brock or Mahomes, best quarterback on the planet. You heard Brady on the broadcast. Reed was giving him easy throws because he was lacking 3 of his top 4 receivers. Where is that for Brock? They're still pushing the ball downfield. They're not checking to things. And but yeah, Cowan got a bomb. He got a tunnel screen. I was so happy to see that. Also known as a play Deebo runs. What a shock. You have a player in there that can kind of emulate Deebo, but you did not play him until you had absolutely no choice, and Ronnie Bell still had twice as many snaps. Thanks, Kyle.
I just don't understand how Kyle is, like you said, an offensive guru, and like anytime there's any type of upset in the apple cart, like he's completely without answers.
Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah. Nothing's adjusted. There's no backup plan. Like, how many times have we, watched games where Christian McCaffrey isn't available, and all of a sudden, like, maybe he's out for part of a game, or somebody goes out for part of the game, and Kyle says, well, during the week, he was a really big part of our game plan, and we wanted to attack them. And it's like, well, then don't you? So if that guy isn't playing, then essentially you have no other options. You have no other answer, because you predicated your game plan on one guy to take what do they call it? Yeoman's work of the, of the taking the whole load of the offense on his back. And now that he's not playing, you have nothing. There's no adjustment. There's no secondary move that you can go to. Like, they asked him about his issues with man-to-man coverage and the 49ers. Yeah, Brock played poorly, but they can't get off man-to-man coverage at all. And then, it's pathetic. And
it's not going to get any better without Ayuk. And, Pearsall, interestingly enough, led the receivers in snaps, which maybe isn't that ridiculous given what, Deebo went out and everything that was else that was happening. Maybe, this week, Dallas, he gets a little bit better. Then there's a bye week. Then you're going to Tampa that doesn't have a great defense. And they traded one of their starting cornerbacks, Carlton Davis, to the Lions, so it's weakening Tampa. Good for us. Strengthening Detroit. Not good for us. But I'm with you, especially when Kyle stresses positionless football, right? Interchangeable pieces, Deebo in the backfield, McCaffrey out wide. If you still want to build your game plan around a specific player, then theoretically, positionless football, when that player goes out, you should have someone else that can step right in. No one can step right in and do what McCaffrey does, and no one can do it even to 80 to 90% of what he does, because they don't have another back on the roster that's a dual threat back. And they've specifically drafted running backs that are not that, because they have McCaffrey. God forbid you have a McCaffrey backup clone, they're good. And they don't have another type of Deebo player. I think it could be Cowing. Granted, he's like 30 pounds lighter, but someone that is good with the ball in space. If you're a punt returner, even though special teams sucks, you should be good with the ball in space. And I would love to see that be expanded as part of the offense should Deebo not be able to go. And right now, I think we could assume, or they should be building the game plan without Debo. I know he's an athlete. He's got access to rehabilitation and oxygen tanks and things that us mere mortals, if we had pneumonia, can't, and probably heals better. And he's certainly younger than you and I are, but I wouldn't count on him. So if that's the case, maybe it's a Jordan Mason type game.
He's out of the hospital today. He was released.
It's a good thing, but I would bet against him playing. I really would.
I mean, he's a crapshoot if he stays on the field in games that he is playing, which is a whole other issue that they need to look at in the offseason.
Yep.
Loved him to death, but I mean, like, Jesus, dude, like constantly taking himself out of games. He's gassed. I don't understand that. Jerry Rice, all those other guys never took themselves out of games.
I know.
There's something about that always bothers me and that a lot of people don't notice when I watch games. I'm like, where's he going? What are you doing? Why are you on the sideline? Get back in the game. What? Everybody else is out there. Like, I don't know. It drives me nuts. We'll touch on this because we have to, and because I think it kind of feeds into some of the other stuff that we were talking about during the game. You know, Aiyuk, the Niners caved and paid him, and they shouldn't have. I think we could fair to assume that the Niners, I think, were pretty fed up with him and don't look at him or value him in the same way that he valued himself. And they were okay with moving on from him. And I hate to say this, but like, I was really sad and unfortunate that he got knocked out for the year with his knee.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't done anything or he hasn't participated in anything since he's been on the field since the beginning of the season. Like, he hasn't contributed anything. So I hate to say this, but like, how much of a loss are we talking about right now, other than he's got chemistry with Brock Purdy, which even when Brock Purdy throws a perfect pass to him, it's like either he's got the sun in his eyes or he's not ready for it, or the velocity was too much, which I definitely disagree with because Brock doesn't have any velocity. So, I mean, how are you feeling? Like, I hate to be that guy, but I feel for him personally, but as a team and as like a offense wise, like what has he contributed this year?
I think, even though he's had, and his season's over, a down start to the year, he's still their number one receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still going to draw the number one corner, and he's going to draw certain coverages away to open up Kittle and Debo and Cowing or Pearsall, Jennings, whoever else. So I think the offense is going to feel the loss. One, because at some point, if the ACL, MCL injury never happened, he would have been stacking better games. Again, he's not a Justin Jefferson or anyone that's going to go for like 4 straight 125-yard games. He's not a fantasy football dynamic receiver that you absolutely want, especially if it's like 1 point per reception. He's just not that guy. So I understand like the Niners holding out on the contract or not wanting to give him what, Tyreek Hill and them got, because it's just a different volume allocation that Brandon gets versus, other receivers. If Brandon was on another team, different situation, but he's not. So you just kind of have to do the math based on where he's at. Are they going to feel the loss? I think they certainly will. I mean, they don't have anybody that, you can't even say like, oh, if Debo's healthy, say against Tampa, it's not, and this is going to be a bad comparison. It's not like when you had Rice and Taylor. If Rice was out, Taylor could emulate some of the stuff that Rice could do. Taylor was fast. He was a good route runner. He had strong hands, good after the catch. Debo has strong hands and is good after the catch. He's not a good route runner. He's not going to run by people. He's not savvy. So you're left with that gaping hole of, unless Pearsall matures very, very quickly, and by very quickly, I mean probably 4 games from now, that chemistry that he had with Brock and that timing, now you're going to slot in anybody new, but especially a rookie. How comfortable do we think they're going to be between now and Sunday night, between now and the bye week, between now and Tampa? Like, it's going to get better, but it's going to be a loss that we're all going to feel, maybe not statistically because it hasn't been great, but I think there's a lot of things either beyond the scenes or beyond the tape or when watching the All 22, which I don't, that Aiyuk does that frees up other people, that there isn't going to be that respect factor for whoever takes the spot. There's just, they're going to play Debo the way they play Debo, but Pearsall, Jennings, Conley, it's not Brandon in terms of a DC's mind.
in a way, and then maybe this is me thinking down the road, but Cowing and Pearsall being forced into the lineup to get snaps, I think it's super, super critical that they take advantage of this time, because they probably wouldn't have if things were the normal way, which is, the starting three playing healthy. I mean, how much are we going to see a Pearsall and Cowing through the season? They'll probably, sprinkle them in here and there, but in a way, this for the future, depending on how this year ends, probably could be one of the best things to happen as far as getting guys acclimated in real live NFL snaps in pressure games where they need to make big plays in order to keep this team, from, missing the playoffs altogether. So you're right. The chemistry, the blocking in the run game, Brock's confidence in throwing to guys that he's not exactly accustomed to, those are all real things. But bright side of this is now you're going to get not production, but you're going to get some snaps from guys that probably wouldn't have gotten a ton of snaps, and maybe it'll be down the road, it'll be fruitful. Like maybe Cowing is the big play guy downfield, and Pearsall is a little bit more like a smaller, like combination of Debo and Aiyuk kind of together. He's good in the short areas of space and quickness. He's a good route runner. It's just, he just needs to get snaps. And he had some miscommunications during the game where I guess him and Brock weren't on the same page. And the only way you're going to get better at that is if you play. So,
and you're getting a different, let's say, skill set, a different dynamic skill set in terms of these two receivers in the red zone. Red zone was an issue. Obviously, Brock throwing that interception in the end zone at 21-12. That is just going to be a different feel, more twitchy, both of them, than what Debo is, or Aiyuk, and certainly Jennings, probably the least twitchy of the receivers, but he's a big body, just like Kittle, should be able to go up and get something. Getting snaps for the rookies is never a bad thing. You never want it to happen at a player's expense like this. I mean, it should happen at the expense of Ronnie Bell getting cut, or Chris Conley turning an ankle for a week or two. Not that I'm wishing that on anybody, but this is a tough pill to swallow to do it. But it's going to give them experience, and everything is short and long term. It's going to give them experience for this year to hopefully make a playoff push. And then the years beyond, when I've been saying for probably a year and a half that the plan was probably always to re-sign Brandon and trade Debo in the offseason after this season coming that we're in now. And that still may be the plan, except now you have a receiver coming off of an ACL. So now maybe they hold on to Debo unless Debo says, I'm not playing on my final year of my contract, which is understandable too, because he just saw Aiyuk get, blow his knee out. But that could, if Pearsall and Cowing performs and Debo takes that hard stance, maybe it makes it easier, or you're a little bit more comfortable to maybe trade Debo in the offseason, knowing that maybe you don't have Aiyuk until beginning of October. These are all down the road things, but that Aiyuk injury affects in some way, for sure, Debo's future with the Niners. I don't know which way it goes yet, but that once it happened, impacted his future with San Francisco, for better or worse.
I think that is a possibility, but if we get some production down the road with some of these younger guys, maybe he can be let go. Maybe he can be a casualty of, not being able to afford him because we got to pay Demo and Banks, maybe another player. I mean, I think if Renardo Green continues to play well, I think Charvarius Ward becomes expendable, which was kind of the plan all along with the Renardo Green pick. If you're being honest with yourself, 49er fans, Charvarius Ward was not going to get a second contract with this team. They drafted Renardo Green, I think, with the explicit reason of like, okay, if this guy pans out, we sign Demo, and then we got a guy across from him who's a lot less expensive and younger. And so that still might be the case. So you're right. The thing is, when there's injuries, does Debo, I don't know if Debo has any wiggle room to ask for more money because of the situation the 49ers might be in next year, or is he just going to play on the option that they, the contract that they signed this offseason? That would definitely be something that they have to answer at some point. I have these two topics. We could do either one of them. Let's go with Brock Purdy. I'm blocking people on X and Twitter and anybody who posts anything from Colin Cowherd or that goofball. Nick Wright. The Brock Purdy talk now of like the Niners need a new quarterback and that Brock Purdy isn't it, based off of a bad performance on a game in a game where, like you said, he lost a bunch of his guys, and honestly, they might not have gave up a ton of sacks, but on crucial plays when he needed it, he got whacked a couple times. So like the offensive line definitely failed him. That being said, I mean, what do you make of these clowns? And we know who we're talking about, like these idiots that come on early in the morning and, think the Niners should just trade everybody away and, get rid of Brock and fire Shanahan. They have all these grand ideas that are only going to make the Niners go backwards instead of either staying the same or maybe improving. All these things, all you're doing is pretty much saying we're quitting on what we've been doing, and we're gonna go backwards. So here, take our quarterback, take some of our skill position players, and we're gonna reset. We're gonna go to the draft, which is a crapshoot, which you don't know what you're gonna get, but that's what we're gonna do. Like it's insane. Your thoughts on the Brock Purdy?
They're twidiots. Like they're complete twidiots, whether it's Nick Wright or Grant Cohn or any of his posse or anybody out there, people that were pro Lance, Brock haters. I mean, I was in we'll call it a dialogue with someone that basically just came out and said, oh, people are always hating on us because we wanted Trey just to have a fair chance. Trey would have made those passes to Cowing and to Kittle. And my response was, you're assuming he would have gotten through his progression and gotten there and recognized that they were open and thrown it. That's problem one. Problem two is you don't know if he overthrows it, throws it out of bounds, underthrows it. Like he wasn't the most accurate by any means. Brock is much more accurate. And he's still QB3, right? On Dallas. So that stuff is nonsensical. Brock's going to get paid. If everybody, listen, if everyone wants to say he's not worth over $60 million more than what Dak gets paid, then I would agree with him just because I hate the whole mentality of next man up gets paid the most. That's absurd. Mahomes should be paid the most, even though this year, no one's talking about 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions for Sir Patrick Mahomes, right? But they're 6-0. They're not winning because of him. They're not really winning despite him, but they're winning mainly on defense and the running game, and Mahomes is making plays when he needs to. Brock is a franchise quarterback. Brock is a top 10 quarterback. Brock is not Jesus Christ, who is perfect and cannot have a bad game ever. And did he play this way against a better Chiefs defense in the Super Bowl? No. He was clean, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, was sacked a couple times, and walked off the field in the fourth quarter and in overtime, given with the 49ers having a 3-point lead. And the defense could not close out Mahomes in those instances. And you can't really fault him because he was a better version of Patrick Mahomes at the time. He's going to get paid 50, 55, 57 million, whatever it's going to be. He is the Niners franchise quarterback moving forward. Yes, he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. The one to Cowing was 50 yards in the air. And I'd rather have the way that game was going. It was so difficult for them to move the ball, get first downs, get in scoring position that I'm glad he didn't over-underthrow Kittle. I'm glad he didn't over-underthrow Cowing because at least it got them in scoring range. But I understand the whole, if he hits Kittle in stride, it's a touchdown. If he hits Cowing in stride, it's a touchdown, not an interception in the end zone. All well and good. Yeah. But these pundit morons feel vindicated because he had a game like this. Whereas, again, I just look at the circumstances. Terrible game against the Ravens. Bad game here. Badish game against the Browns and Vikings last year. If he's had 4 or 5 bad games in 2.5 years, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about? I want to play this clip. I played it yesterday. It was a caller that called in, I think 95.7 the game. He talked a little bit about Kyle, which we're going to get to, and then he also talked about Brock Purdy. I find this to be interesting. The guy was pissed, to say the least. So I definitely was feeling what he had to say.
888-957-9570. Let's ride. Burns in Fremont first up. Hi, Burns. Thanks for calling.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh.
I too have been listening from the morning when I got to my office. This morning was listening to the morning show, the middle guys, Steinmetz and all that, and it just started boiling. The blood started boiling, and the boiling is for you spoiled Niner fans. You make me so sick. It's unbelievable. Hey, I'm pretty sure even though that nutty guy in Dallas is so nuts, he'd still probably give you Trey Lance if you want in a heartbeat. You want Bryce Young, Niner fans? I'm sure the Panthers will take Brock. Do you think a Spencer Rattler for Brock Purdy? Saints would do that in a second. It makes me sick, Niner fan. And this is what really gets me. This is what gets me. All you dang Niner fans, I don't want to give them 65. 65 million? Who cares? Give them $1 billion. It's not your money. I don't care. Give them as much money as they want. I do not care about the money. But listen, that's only part A. Part B is the coach. Shanahan, great coach. Who do you want, Niner fan? You want old man Bill? You want old man Bill coming in here and calling the shots? Look how that turned out for New England, right? I mean, give me a break. This is it. If you call in and you're done with Brock and you're done with Shanahan, tell me who you want. Because you know what, Niner fan? You're closer to Buffalo than you are to the old Niners. And that's it, man. That is it.
Burns, thank you very much for the call.
That, Burns.
I got everything except for the Buffalo reference at the end. What do you mean by that?
I'm not understanding what you mean. Closer to Buffalo and losing Super Bowls?
I
If
guess
that's the
okay.
case, I guess we're on that pace. We're 0-3 in the last 3. We're like the reverse Bills right now. Unfortunately. Yeah, like that's the thing. Like it's amazing how everybody's just so willing to give up on Guy, right? What is your option? Who are you going to? Give me your answer for Brock. What's your answer? Tell me what your answer is. You don't have one.
No,
You just
I don't
are
know
mad because Trey Lance didn't work out and you got stuck with the guy who was the last pick in the draft, who has no fanfare, who's just a dude that works hard, keeps his nose clean, doesn't do anything but just try to be better on the football field. He's a good quarterback. Does he have flaws in his game and a weak arm and all these deficiencies? Yes. But if you're going to go and say that they need to get rid of him and move on from him, who's your option?
I think in both scenarios, who's the option, right? Like,
yeah,
for Purdy, I don't know who free agent quarterbacks are next year, and I don't, rookie quarterbacks. And I know Bill Barnwell on ESPN has a theory of like, if every year you can find a rookie in the draft and every 5 years reset and build around the rookie, like that sounds so nice in theory. And Bill Barnwell, as I'm sure nice of a guy as he is, dude, we don't need 45 paragraphs in an article. Just give me like 4 or 5. Like you're long-winded, probably again, very intelligent, very thoughtful, but I don't want to read all that shit.
Everywhere. Yeah.
It's crazy, especially for all the folks that don't have attention spans. And mine is shaky at best. So yeah, who do you want at quarterback? The Trey Lance people are still hanging on to the whole, well, maybe it would have been Lance because they didn't see it. They didn't see the overt failure with their own eyes, but they were ignoring the lack of everything else, the lack of feel, poise, accuracy, leadership, like everything. He checked no boxes other than mobility. And even his mobility was not as advertised. He lumbered. He was more Ben Roethlisberger than Josh Allen.
Yep.
Head coach wise, Ben Johnson. Bring Robert Saleh back. Let him get. Yeah, Robert Saleh, failure at the Jets. Bill Belichick's last 2 or 3 years in New England were under 500. And Ben Johnson, you just don't know what you are going to get. It sucks to get so high on the mountain, but not reach the summit, right? And I know people are going to have the stance of, well, it's not a participation trophy. You shouldn't be happy just to make the NFC Championship game or happy just to make the Super Bowl. I get it. But I'm happy to have a goddamn shot every season that starts, knowing that you just need a ticket to the dance, and maybe you get to dance with Cinderella or the prom queen. Because nobody else, there's 20 other teams in the NFL every year you can guarantee are not even going to get a ticket, that are going to tailgate and not get in the door.
Yeah.
And
you want to have Trevor Lawrence?
Yep.
Because he's better than Brock, right? But the Jacksonville Jaguars are perennial losers. Every year you can book it that they're not going to even sniff the playoffs. Every year. The last 2.5 years, I think Brock Purdy's done pretty well for himself, other than you said, like a handful of games. And all of it is not on him. There's so many other factors that go into some of these losses with Brock. People live in this like overreaction. And like we said, like there is people that feed off of that make content or are content creators that like completely just get that from people and stir the pot and get people thinking like, yeah, let's just blow it all up. But they don't have any option of where to go or how to do it. We can, I mean, like it infuriates me because it's like, it's all over social media right now since the loss on Sunday.
And if it's about making the playoffs and winning Super Bowls, that's what it's about. That's what the Niners are about, winning 5. That's what the spoiled fans want. I get all of that stuff. But if it's about playoffs, since Brock's been in the league, which is essentially 2022, so we're talking about 2 postseasons, no one has been better than him or more wins than him in the league than Mahomes. So what are we really talking about in terms of a viable alternative that can be as good or better? There are none that the Niners could acquire or would even want to acquire. And it's okay that he had a bad game. The Chiefs defense this year and the Ravens defense last year have made a lot of quarterbacks and OCs look bad. That's okay. Just because the team is donning, the red jerseys, crimson, whatever the official color is, and wearing gold helmets does not mean they have the God-given right to kick the shit out of every team every Sunday, Monday, or Thursday. Other teams sometimes play better, guys. Sometimes you tip the cap and say, wasn't our day. Now, this year it's been a little ridiculous with the Rams and the Cardinals. Vikings 5-1, and they have trouble playing in Minnesota for 30 years. I get it, but
literally
Jesus, everyone does need to chill out. And the way that, the Chief game, as much as it was a revenge game and got to prove you could beat Mahomes, this, that, and the other thing, I go back to, again, the way that the offense deteriorated and had no availability starting in the mid-second quarter. Shut up. They were never going to win that game. And they still teased us that they might. They were still in it. They were still
close. Listen, I'll be honest. Brock Purdy right now isn't good enough to be able to handle the loss of the guys that he lost. He's not.
Is there someone that is in the league?
There's a very few amount of quarterbacks in the NFL that can deal with that. You're looking at one of them and the one that was doing the commentary in the game. And that's very few. Very few. Go across the league and tell me how you do if you don't have all your, I want to watch Baker Mayfield now. If he plays off his gourd and does really well, then I'll stand corrected. Peter Lee, I agree. Like I like how you included everybody, not just Brock. You said,
yep.
He was glad that Brady was, critical of Brock, Shanny, the offense and the defense and the special teams. It's a whole team thing.
Yes.
This whole thing where it's just Brock or it's, yep, he's the problem. I'm going to have to reset or let's just go sell everybody off. Like this team, full strength with a couple new pieces added in the offseason and the draft next year. It happened in 2020 and then in 2021, 2022, we got better and then got back to the Super Bowl in 2023 last year. Unless you are just like over the salary cap and you have no room to maneuver and you've missed on a bunch of draft picks, then I can understand blowing this whole thing up. Yeah. But we have players that are still in their prime on this team. Fred Warner's still in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
Bosa's still in his prime. I think Brock Purdy's still in his prime. He hasn't even hit his prime yet.
Yeah, it's only been 2 years. He hasn't hit it yet. But no, and it's fair. Peter saying, this was a failure across the board.
Yeah,
offense couldn't do anything. Kudos to the Chiefs defense. Defense played Mahomes pretty well. Could not stop the run, and that's a failure on Sorensen and the game plan because, especially once Juju Smith-Schuster went out. You knew that it was going to turn into a running game or a conservative game, and they had no answers. And special teams just is what it is. And even they tease this, right? Even then, the football god said, "Well, wait a second. You guys gotta stop the punt, stop the fake punt." And Anders Carlson kicks a 55-yard field. Whoa! So all right, I got to set things right. Punt return by Hardman, missing an extra point, and then the coup d'etat, more poetic than anything Maya Angelou could write is Wishnowski's onside kick attempt. How much of a failure that kick was is emblematic of the entire special teams this year. It's almost laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. So loss across lost across the board. And if Debo's going to be out again and Jennings and obviously no Ayuk and whatever else with McCaffrey and others, this is not is Brock Superman? Can he do it by himself? Because the answer is no. And neither could Mahomes. Do you think they would be 6-0 without that kick-ass defense? Do you think Patrick Mahomes would be a 5-0 quarterback going into the Niner game with a 6 touchdown, 6 interception stat line if Spagnuolo's defense and Andy Reid's creativity wasn't bailing his ass out? Absolutely not. So
they're a great team.
They're a great team.
The Niners have great players this year, but they're not a great team. There's a lot of holes. There's guys that are in starting positions that shouldn't be, like Jair Brown. Jair Brown is overmatched, should not be on the field. Mustafa, other than getting trucked by Mahomes, which I know that really bothered him, that man is a heat-seeking, play-ending missile. If we could only get the other 10 guys on defense to play with that veracity and that anger and that just, they showed a tackle that he did during the game. I don't know who it was. It was the most perfect form, squared up tackle I have ever seen. Both arms, full. I mean, it was like he squared them up, hit them, dropped them. It wasn't flailing like Bosa when he slides off of guys during the sack, or Warner when he slides off of guys on the sideline, coming in half cocked and sideways. Like this guy came in. I was like, man, if we could just get 10 more like this guy, we'd be okay. As far as like Kyle, as we switch the conversation over, like, who's your option? Who are you bringing in? I did say this last night, and tell me if you'd be okay with this. So if the Rams go into sell mode, right, and they end up having a really bad year, if there was a way that McVay becomes coach of the 49ers, would you take it? I know this is just a fantasy world. That's the only guy I could see that could take this current roster and maybe add some other pieces through the draft and free agency. And I don't know, could it be an improvement? I don't know. I mean, like, he's got a chip. I mean, he's done some pretty good things other than beat the 49ers, but he's pretty good. I think he's done some, good stuff with the Rams over the time he's been there. I can't see anybody in the league right now that I could say, here, hand over the reins. Here's a ready-made team other than a couple positions that are old that need to be revamped. Here you go.
Listen, in this fantasy world that we're living in, I think he would be an upgrade over Kyle because he represents an evolution of Kyle's system. And I think that's what this team needs, is an evolution of the system, more diverse play calling, ability to get more personnel involved. Ridiculous. The leading receiver for the Chiefs on Sunday was Noah Gray, backup tight end. There is no earth, if you believe in like the multiverse, like DC Comics, there is no earth in the multiverse where a Kyle Shanahan led team, Niners or otherwise, would ever have a backup tight end lead the team in receiving. Why? Because he doesn't use backup tight ends at all. It's a dead giveaway that when he goes to tight ends, if it's Saubert or Tonjes, they are not getting the ball. They are a below zero threat to receive a pass. Noah Gray had 4 for 66 yesterday. Eric Saubert has 4 for 67 on the year. No other tight end has a catch, and they only have 3 tight ends, so that would be Jake Tonjes. So, yes, in this fantasy world, do I think McVay would be an upgrade? I do, because he, as I said, I'm just going to repeat it. He represents the offensive evolution that I think Shanahan needs to take. And not that McVay will be a better fit for this team, this O-line, this skill position, whatever. But I think there needs to be a sprucing up of the offense. And McVay has shown, if no other time than when they met this year, that he can stir the pot in a good way and win with lesser talent versus Kyle, who had all his talent but CMC. So yes, I think he can squeeze the orange and get more juice at this point than Shanahan could.
Would he be able to squeeze a rock and get rock juice?
He got anything.
Maybe. That's the thing with Shanahan. Like, I understand people's frustration, but this thing of him being on the hot seat and he should be fired, that should only be the case if they have a viable replacement. And Jed York isn't going to do that based on what happened in the past.
No.
Jed York's afraid to do that because you know as well as I do, Kyle will go somewhere else. He will be unemployed for like less than a day. And someone's going to scoop his ass up and they're going to give him a ton of cap space and a top pick in the draft. Not saying he's going to do good with it, but you better have a solution that is going to guarantee that you win the Super Bowl. Guarantee. Mahomes, up until Mahomes, Andy Reid was Kyle Shanahan. It took a Hall of Fame quarterback to make Andy Reid become a Hall of Fame coach. Because up until then, he was like Kyle. He was an almost coach who almost won, but could never quite get over the hump. And he had Donovan McNabb, but he wasn't quite that. I mean, like, think about that. That's what it took. So, like, all this stuff of like, you know, let's replace Brock right away because he's struggling. Like, you have to, if you're going to do these things, you have to make sure that what you're bringing in is better than what you're letting leave the building. People are just so ready to move on. And I understand the frustration because I grew up during a time where 5 Super Bowls happened during my first 15 years of my life. Okay. I lived through it. There's been none in the last 30. It sucks, but be careful what you wish for if you don't have an option or a replacement or a better option in mind. People are so like, I know it's emotional. I get emotional at games too. And I want to throw stuff at players. And if I was a player in that locker room and I saw somebody smiling, I would probably throw hands on somebody. I am that guy. But once you let your common sense kick in and you start thinking about all these things that some of these morning YouTubers are saying, do we just got to gut the whole thing and start over? Like it's some sort of automatic thing that we're going to be back to where we were when we do that. Like that, to me, that's why y'all aren't freaking GMs and head coaches and run organizations, is because of dumbass takes like that, where just because something's not going great this season, you just want to blow it all up.
Right.
It just, to me, that I understand, like I said, frustration, but be real with yourself.
Organizationally, they have the beautiful mansion, coaching wise and personnel wise. Does it need renovation every once in a while? Sure, but you're not going to knock down the mansion to try. And it's not like you're guaranteed to build another one, to try to build a viable house. This is a team that is, I think, intelligent enough financially with the cap that when players go, and if we're talking about if it's Greenlaw, Hufanga, Debo, Charvarius, or if it's Diamador Lenore, if they keep Charvarius Ward instead, players are going to go, players are going to come in. Free agents, another draft class is going to come in. Hopefully they hit, even if they hit half as well on the next draft class as this draft class looks, that just keeps, again, the lifeblood and the pipeline of good players in the system. And Brock's going to get paid his. But yes, so the question of like, what's the answer to Brock? People are living in the world of, and again, it's Niners had Montana, they had Young, back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And then after that, it was like, okay, you know, Garcia was a Pro Bowl quarterback. And then Alex Smith never made a Pro Bowl, and Kaepernick. So there's still that 80s, 90s halo that's happening, that if you don't have a top 5 quarterback, he's shit, and we got to bring somebody else in.
And we just got to keep rebooting it every couple of years.
Got to keep rebooting. And maybe you can do that for 3 decades until you find the next Mahomes. The Patriots sucked for how many years before Brady? The Patriots are going to suck for how many years after Brady?
That was the point I made to some Patriots fans. I said, you call yourself a fan, right? I said, I've been a fan after all that good stuff happened, through a bunch of bad stuff, and I was still rocking my stuff.
Tony Eason?
Still repping all my stuff. And then you got if you're a Patriots fan and you want to tell me that you're a diehard, all this stuff that's happening right now, you know, the coming back down to earth and being an also ran team like you were before Brady, stick around through that, and then you could tell me you're a real fan. Like there's ebbs and flows with the NFL. Teams are really good for a really long time, and then new management comes in, players retire, people in the front office move on and go to other organizations, and then you suck. And then somehow you draft the Hall of Fame QB named Patrick Mahomes, and all of a sudden you've won 3 Super Bowls in the last however many years, and now Mahomes is being considered one of the greatest of all time. How rare is that? It's so rare.
It's so rare. I mean, again, it's Mahomes, it's Jackson, it's Josh Allen. If you want to throw Burrow in there, I don't know if who I'm forgetting to maybe round out a top 10. But just because you don't have one of those guys does not mean you don't have an All-Pro, Pro Bowl, dynamic MVP finalist caliber player. And it's not a matter of Brock's good enough. It's not that. It's Brock's a very damn good quarterback who's had a handful of bad games. Everybody's on Josh Allen, and Josh Allen's having a pretty good season. He's having a very good season, right? Jared Goff's having a very good season, but he's still Jared Goff. Didn't Josh Allen have a game against the Texans where he was like 9 for 31 and they got their asses kicked? Maybe it's not as sexy of a matchup as a Super Bowl.
He's had some
rematch.
bad games and a lot of picks.
Yeah. Can't beat the Chiefs, and Brock throws 3 interceptions. And in the end, listen, this shit just happens, guys. And even with that, I mean, well, the last pick essentially made it 28-12 Kansas City, but the Niners were still fighting. Brock was still fighting. Brock was still slinging. Remember that bomb to Cowing was when it was 21-12. Then obviously he throws a pick a couple plays later. Just because you don't have a top 5 potential Hall of Fame quarterback, potential generational quarterback, does not mean you give up on what you have when it is very frigging good. And if we're playing, they're playing Dallas this week and the whole Dak Prescott thing. And yeah, I think Prescott was an MVP finalist last year too. Dallas was in the same position, and I would take Brock over Dak or comparable, maybe skill-wise. There's different skills for each player. But what was their alternative? But the Trey fans were saying, let him walk. They got Trey Lance. Yeah, they said, no thanks. We will sign Dak for $60 million a year, the richest contract ever, just so Trey Lance doesn't step on the field.
On all the people who think that Trey Lance was the better quarterback and that Brock Purdy, stole it away from him. If that's the case, why is he a third stringer in Dallas holding the clipboard?
Exactly.
If he's so good, and if he's just so great, and he has all these attributes, and just we're not giving him a chance, wouldn't he show out at camp instead of throwing 5 interceptions in a training camp practice with the Cowboys? And how many of those were pick sixes? Get out of here, man. Like, the chances of hitting on Hall of Fame quarterbacks is really, really scarce. The fact that we have 2 that hit back to back in the same organization, I think that's more of a testament to the front office and the people that we had in charge from, say, like 82 to probably about 97, 98 during like the Jed York. Yeah. Eddie DeBarlo era, Carmen Policy, all those guys, McVay, all those people that ran the draft, the Bob McKittricks of the offensive line. The Niners in that era, in that window, were blessed with just greatness throughout the organization. It wasn't just Joe. It wasn't just Steve. We had the best receiver that's probably ever played it. Okay. We probably have one of the best defensive players, a free safety, that's ever played the game. That doesn't happen. And people just want to think we're just going to reset it here and then maybe it'll it doesn't happen. We're really close. The Niners right now, maybe they are a head coach change away from winning a Super Bowl. Who knows?
And they're not in salary cap hell either.
No, they're in a really good state.
Yeah, they're not going to be in cap hell after Brock. There's ways that to me, they're going to extend Kittle. Kittle's got probably another 2-3 years left. I know Kelsey looked like he was slowing down, and he actually came out and said so much or as much after the game. They're going to extend Warner.
Kelsey's looking old, man.
You're going to get another good 3-4 years out of Warner, and that's going to lower their cap hits by close to $10 million each for more money for whoever else they need to re-sign and bring in. They are organizationally sound, and they are, as an organization and a team, they are always in the mix pre and during the season for making a deep run. And we were talking off camera before this started that 3-4 now, injuries not looking great, but if they can beat Dallas, and Dallas is to us the way we are to the Chiefs, right? It's a team that they can't beat. So get to 4-4. Last year they were 5-3. Totally hear you when you said it's a different feel this year than last year, but it's still only one game apart. And then you have Tampa with both the receivers hurt. You have Seattle at home. They win the next 3 games in their 3 NFC games. The entire conversation about the Niners is going to go, here come the Niners again. Are they gearing up for another Super Bowl run? Now, they got to win these next 3 for that conversation to happen, but it's immensely doable. 6-4, 4 weeks from now is really, really doable, guys.
Peter Lee has a good question. He says, do you see the similarities of the current Shanny Niners with the Golden State Warriors during the Mark Jackson era?
It's interesting. Well,
I'm not a Warriors fan, so I can't speak on that.
no, I'm not a Warriors fan, but just knowing at least what I do about, both coaches, I don't think the talent in Golden State drastically changed. Steve Kerr, what is he implementing in terms of, running his offense? They were still a 3-and-D based offense with Clay and Steph. And then it wasn't until a couple years after Kerr gets there, or several years after Kerr gets there, that they bring in Durant and they get their, back-to-back titles and whatnot. I don't see the coach change in the NBA potentially being as impactful as a coach change in the NFL, because it's not like go back to between before Harbaugh got there and after. It was garbage team to same roster and NFC Championship game. The switch wasn't turned that quickly with Golden State. Did Kerr improve things? Sure, but I don't think in the NBA it's one player out on the court represents 20% of your team, and that one player or 2 players in their case, and they had Draymond Green, of course, too, can absolutely dominate a game on both sides, right? Both sides. The NFL, it's 22 players, O&D and terrible special teams, which we'll ignore. So I don't know if it's going to have it's that order of magnitude. I think it's a good comparison, especially given that it's the Bay Area, but I don't think a coach change would do that. Would McVay enhance the offense some? Sure. But if the defense is if the defense is still going to be middling, then they're what? Maybe a win better, 2 wins better. And what is that going to do at the end of the day?
I don't know how much longer you have, but I want to touch on Sorensen because I think Sorensen is an absolute dog, defensive coordinator. They are as bad as ever with this man in charge. And the thing that really got me, and I can continually complain about, is that these players cried and threw Wilks under the bus after the Super Bowl, rightfully so. And they weren't shy about it, right? And Kyle wasn't shy about it because they fired him a couple days after the Super Bowl, maybe a week, pretty much saying that he was the reason we lost, which, again, maybe he was, but maybe he wasn't, because players still got to make plays too.
Right.
And now we have some guy who's been on the staff for ages, who's never sniffed anything close to defensive coordinator, and all of a sudden now he's running your defense. And I mean, I got the statistics here. I mean, they're bad in any measurable category you can think of. And that's a big thing because they still have a good amount of decent players. I'm trying to think, is it this one? Here we go. So we got these are the 49ers defensive ranks currently under Sorensen. They're 16th in points, 14th in yards. So that's middle of the pack, I guess. 26 in rushing TDs. That's horrendous. 13 in yards per rush. 27th in third downs. That's unacceptable if you're trying to win games, if you can't get a team off the field on third downs. 16th in fourth downs. How are you middle of the pack on something that happens so rarely?
Yeah. And
then 23 in red zone defense. I mean, what is there to say other than he's ass and that he doesn't belong as our defensive coordinator? But according to the players, they can't have somebody come into this organization who's from the outside. God forbid you bring in a real defensive coordinator, someone who runs just a kick-ass scheme like a Spagnuolo, who the head coach just goes, there you go. Take care of that side of the ball, please. It's bad.
Good. No, well, a couple things with that. I think I saw another stat where in terms of, it was either second half scoring, but I want to say probably fourth quarter scoring. They are the worst. They're giving up the most points in the fourth quarter so far this season. Last year under Wilks, they were best. So if nothing else, Wilks knew how to adjust. Maybe some of the games didn't start out great. The season started out good, 5-0, then obviously dropping 3 straight. And the playoffs were its own issue, but at the same time, you're playing better teams in in a 3-game sample of the playoffs than you are in 17 games over the regular season. So you're going to expect your defense maybe to take a little bit more
Detroit,
of a hit.
Kansas City, 3 top teams, probably the top. If you have a top 5, they're 3 of the top 5.
Right. So, and this is going to be a drastic comparison. There's never been a defense like the 85 Bears running their 46. They just burst through lines, intimidated defenses, different era, right? With maybe some of the things they were doing, how physical they were with receivers down the field. It's going to get called now, etc. But I do go back to, there's still too much talent, whether it's just on the back of the shirt or actual talent in the body. Too many individual players that are way too talented that this defense is not dialing up schemes to intimidate or flex or impose their will on other offenses the way that the Bears did, or the Ravens did, or the Seahawks did. Hell, even the Browns did last year, because it's all what all of those teams did not do, except maybe Seattle, although they did have a pass rush, was read and react. Read and react. Rush 4, make sure you cover well on the back end. It only works if your front 4 is dominant, and this front 4 is not. But there's enough talented skill players at every single level, outside at the corners, safeties, linebackers, and D-line, that why aren't they flexing more? Why aren't they challenging more? The philosophy is do your job and do it well, make it hard on the quarterback. But you know what else makes it hard on the quarterback? Being under duress a lot of the game, being on your back a lot of the game, completely stuffing the run, challenging quarterbacks to go deep. Let them know that the blitz is coming. Let the quarterback make a quick decision. That's what Minnesota's entire defense is predicated on. They don't care. They're showing you they're coming, and chances are they're coming. And they're 5-1 because of it. The talent should not be there just to react. The talent should be there to play downhill. And even when Robert Saleh was here saying all gas, no brakes, did they really play like that? Not really. So these models are great to put on your car bumper or wear as a t-shirt, but let's see it. I haven't walked away from a game the past 3 years looking at a Niner team going, that was a kick-ass defense today. They flexed, they exerted their will, and they got the players to do it. They don't have the coaching and they don't have the scheme.
The first half of the 2019 season, they were flexing. They were pushing teams around. Their defensive line was dominant. They were always in the backfield. Richard Sherman kind of tapped into the old Richard Sherman, at least for parts of that season. You had Ronald Blair. You had, D Ford for a little bit, Nick Bosa, Armstead, Buckner. They were doing it. And and 3/4 of the Super Bowl, they were doing it too. They picked off Patrick Mahomes, and they just couldn't get it done because they had a guy named, Jimmy Garoppolo as their quarterback. And Kyle, again, shriveling up in crunch times, not calling the right plays.
Yep.
A lot of this has to go on the players too. I mean, somebody showed a video of their rush lane integrity on that sneak by Mahomes into the end zone, where he went right up the middle, and it's the same Nick Bosa over pursuing, taking the corner and slipping and falling, and watching a guy as he watches him going in the end. It's just, dude, it's literally the same thing all the time.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think I was saying it earlier before the broadcast. They that was an inside the 5. It was a shotgun, right? QB draw. They played that as if the Chiefs are on their own 20-yard line. 4 down linemen, linebackers behind it, and their secondary. Where were the 5 or 6 defensive linemen? Where was we're daring you to throw the ball, we're not going to let you run? Does it guarantee if you have 5 or 6 on the line that they don't split the D tackles and Mahomes still isn't taking it?
Bro, I have a bad knee. I'm overweight and my back is bad. I could have walked in the end zone.
And you still might have ran over Mustafa. Give yourself enough momentum, you still might have taken him out.
I probably would have broke something running him over, but I still would have ran him over.
As long as you could flex afterwards and taunt.
That's insane. I'm watching that play, and they're rushing as if they're at like the 40.
Exactly. There was no change, and that's why when the Chiefs got inside the 10, and especially the 5, and granted, the Chiefs have a great interior of their line between Humphrey and Trey Smith. Like they have a great. They can be had outside on the tackle, but that doesn't help you when you're in the red zone, inside the 10, inside the 5, and they're just running up the middle. It makes your DNs and tackles irrelevant. They didn't bring in the big boys, didn't bring in the beef at any point. It would have been great.
I think
Again,
they should make some moves.
No point during the second half, and they got run through.
They should make some moves. So you want to not fire a head coach? You want to not fire? Move on from Kocurek. Move on from him. Let him go.
Well, listen, if a coach is going to go, it's going to be Snyder first. It's got to be Snyder first.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. And I was thinking, if you want to start making people feel like their jobs might be in jeopardy, you got to have a couple sacrificial lambs. It's probably, if it continues the way that it is, and I don't see a reason why it's not. Snyder is an absolute dog water special teams coach. I think I got his stats on here too. The Niners are allowing 20 yards, dude, per punt return, which ranks last in the NFL. They're allowing 33.2 yards per kickoff return, which is 29th. Like, dude, it's not even close. It's not even close. This isn't like middle of the pack or top 10, like, oh, they're 10th in the league. They can sure it up and maybe get into the top 5. No, this is like back of the line. Like, you can't compete with this special teams like that. And like, there's not even like a discussion. Is there an internal discussion that this guy sucks ass at his job and should be replaced? Like, that's the thing. That's the thing about Kyle Shanahan. He's the type of coach that'll bang his head against the wall and keep doing the same stuff over because it worked in the past.
Yeah.
Because it worked in the past. And well, it worked in the past, and it'll figure its way out. That's how, and the players kind of have that thing too, where, we've done it before. Like, yeah, but you ain't fucking doing it now. So I just move on from him. And at the season's end, if our defensive line keeps playing the way it does, I don't know. This Kocurek thing, I don't get it hyped like everybody else does for Chris Kocurek. I just don't see it.
Well, he's gotten people paid, right? He's gotten Charles Omenihu paid when he went to the Chiefs. Chase Young was going to get a contract no matter, because pass rushers are at a premium, and he's with the Saints now. You mentioned sacrificial lambs, though. I guess there is one, maybe that's borderline, kind of teetering on it. Mitch Wishnowsky, because they brought in a punter to work out.
That's right.
Left-footed punter, but it's under the guise of the Cowboys apparently have a left-footed punter, so they wanted to give Cowing and other returners a look at the spin from a left foot. Okay. Wishnowsky had the knee issue, hasn't been punting great. I mean, you saw that the Chiefs brought in, was it Matt Ariza? And he was kicking the ball like 65, 70 yards downfield, not giving the Niners a chance to return it. At some point, for punt returns, I don't care. I'm sure there's a strategy to punt returns. Let's not sit here and say that there's not. There's got to be, right? That the returners are thinking Wishnowsky's going to put it in the corner, outside the numbers, maybe right down the middle, whatever. But at some point, do you just say, Wish, kick it out of bounds? I don't care if your punt nets 30, 35 yards, just kick it out of bounds, because I'd rather not kick it 45 yards and have a 30-yard return. Like, let's play the math game. Same with kickoffs. Kick it into the end zone. And what's his face? Carlson did a little bit better than I thought in terms of the kickoffs, getting into the end zone. And even that 55-yard field goal that he started off with, stronger leg than Matt Wright. That's fine. But special teams is so bad. Do not give either a kickoff returner or a punt returner a chance to return it. That means even if you punt from midfield, just kick it into the end zone. Don't even try to just take it out of this return team's hands.
They're not good enough to stop it ever.
Right.
Like, don't even chance it. This whole thing, like, let's coffin corner. Let's not. Just let them take it out at the 20 or 30 or 25 or whatever they take it out now. The special teams is horrendous. Every time that there's a special teams op, like where it's time for either the punt return team or the kickoff return team, I'm like, here we go.
It's like I'm curling my toes. Like, you're hoping Cowing doesn't fumble. You're hoping Wishnowsky, now on Sunday, I'm hoping he doesn't whiff on a punt and just drop the goddamn ball based on what he did on the onside kick. I've literally never seen that before.
I've never
literally,
dude. That's like an untrained kicker like me or you being like, all right, let me try this. This can't be that difficult, and we whiff it. That's what that looked like.
Wishnowsky.
Yeah. Did you say Wishnowsky?
Yes.
That's pretty good. I like that. Trying to think what else we can, pontificate on before we get out of here. I guess the other question We touched on injuries. We touched about Dallas. If you're the 49ers and they continue to kind of go back and forth with wins and losses, do you bring either Dre Greenlaw or Christian McCaffrey back this year to risk injury? Because that's one thing that I think not a lot of people are talking about is like, I mean, man, he has this injury issue, or he has this issue with both his Achilles. And are you willing to risk him possibly blowing out his Achilles and then losing him again for another whole season and maybe not having him play until the following season after that? Same thing with Greenlaw. You risk bringing him back to re-injure himself or him not be the guy that he was prior to the injury. I mean, I'm almost saying no on either of them. I know a lot of 49er fans think that's asinine if we have a chance at it, but I'm really worried that, like, the way that we've been playing this year, I don't have a lot of hope that we can have a sustained winning streak that would give us the excuse to say, okay, now we can bring those guys back.
I think so. I think this is multi-layered, and I'll try not to go too long on it. The worst the Niners will be at the bye is 3-5. And if Seattle beats Buffalo, they're going to be 2 games up, but the Niners beat them and they'll probably beat them again in Santa Clara. So my short answer is going to be yes, you bring him back because the West is so bad, right? Like, if you're talking about McCaffrey not being ready for 3 weeks and Greenlaw and they drop the next 3, then I think there's a strong conversation like, all right, listen, we're like 3 or 4 games back now. It's not looking, we still got to go to Buffalo and Green Bay. It's not looking good. I don't think anyone would overtly say they're giving up on the season, but if they are 3-7, 3-8, and McCaffrey and Greenlaw ready to return, then you say no. But the way it's trending, the worst they're going to be is 3-5 coming out of the bye. It sounds like McCaffrey might be ready for Tampa. It sounds like Greenlaw might be ready not too far after that. I think McCaffrey would be a go. If they're both medically cleared, I think McCaffrey's a go. I think Greenlaw could make the decision on his own, looking at the record saying, crap, I had surgery in February from an Achilles and I'm in a contract year. I may decide to sit out. I may decide to say my Achilles doesn't feel right. Things aren't feeling right. Even if the MRIs and everything says that everything's good to go, he can make a business decision for himself, which I would not fault if the season in his mind looked lost. But if they're 4-4, 5-4, 5-5, and the Seahawks are 1 game up and it's such a shit division, Greenlaw, is chomping to get out there. And he probably would want to play if they were 3-8.
They miss him so much. Yeah, he is the worrisome one because it happened in February.
Yeah. I wouldn't blame him if he decided not to, but I think like he's just a dog, man. He wants to be out there with his brothers. He wants to hit somebody.
I would say if they make the Super Bowl, you bring him back during the Super Bowl if you can do that. I don't know how else you couldn't stash him. So essentially that wouldn't happen. Be honest with you, I don't think they're making the Super Bowl this year, but you never know. Yeah, I think it is a multi-layered. If they can somehow beat Dallas and beat Tampa in the next couple weeks, and I say bring him back and go make a move at the trade deadline. I don't know what you'd make. Would you go after Cortland Sutton out of Denver, which I think is stupid because they're winning, so that's not going to happen.
Do you think? I mean, independent of who the receiver is, I guess you could answer this 2 different ways. Do you want them to make a move? Is question 1, and do you think they'll make a move? Is question 2.
That's hard to say. I mean, you have these young guys that are unproven, so making a move might be prudent. But at the same time, I mean, if it's going to continue to be win-loss, wouldn't you just want to go with the guys that you have in the building? I mean, if Debo and Jawan Jennings are both healthy, I think Cowing, Conley, and Parasol is a pretty good receiving core, just based on what we think that they can do. So, man, it's tough, bro. We're like the what ifs is the part that's really important here because the next couple games are crucial. If they lose to Dallas, dude, it's a wrap, dude. It's not
I think so. A couple things. Debo probably misses 1 more game at the most. Jennings probably misses 1 more game at the most. Dallas, but hopefully at least Jennings is there. But you can, for cheap, based on what Adams was traded for, based on what Amari Cooper was traded for, get someone like a DeAndre Hopkins. You could get someone like
I saw that.
Deontay Johnson from Carolina. I wouldn't want Mike Williams from the Jets, like coming off the ACL, big, slow, not what they need. Like, hell, I watch a lot of Giant games, not like I'm forced to, but they're on. Like a Darius Slayton. He's in the last year of his contract. Darius Slayton, is he a step up from Ronnie Bell? Absolutely. Is he maybe a step up in terms of like just savviness from a Cowing or do some different things? Sure. But if you can get one of these receivers for maybe like a fifth or a conditional sixth that turns into a fifth, I mean, they need help in other spots, like certainly D-line, certainly D-end, like receiver. Not that it's a luxury, but it's a luxury based on the numbers. They still have 6 on the roster. The D-line, they only have 8, and they could certainly use more pass rush. I would say you kick the I mean, Cooper Kupp is on the trading block, right? If I'm John Lynch, you call. I mean, why not? I mean, if the Rams do this, even though they're 2-4, they're basically saying season's over, right? So who cares if you traded in division? Doesn't matter. For a second round, but would you do it for a second round pick? That might be a little rich. I don't know, but never hurts to call and ask. I would not be surprised if it's a receiver or anybody just based on the history the past several years of
maybe like a third and a fourth,
for
maybe a third this year and a third this coming draft, and maybe a fourth or third, and then I don't know,
a fourth and Ronnie Bell.
Kupp he's good, but he's had some injuries recently. But he's really good when he's healthy.
Good. I think he's only guaranteed like $7 or $8 million next year, and then the year after that is non-guaranteed.
He would work really good for this type of offense because they like to throw those quick hitters.
Yeah,
they talk about a guy who can beat man-up defense. A guy that can win quickly off the line, which just seems like the Niners just have a collection of guys that just get locked up. Mm-hmm. Hop is too old. I saw that, John. Yeah, I'm not big on Hop. He's kind of tall and slow. It sounds good, but I think Dante Whitner was thinking about Hops from like 6 years ago. You got to really be honest with that one. I'm not saying it's to you, Al, but I'm just saying.
No. And the timing of this isn't really bad because the trade deadline is midweek after the bye. So if they bring somebody in, they can acclimate them during the bye, whatever the position is, right? But especially receiver, you got to learn the terminology, the verbiage, practice, run routes, gain chemistry. It's an opportune time to do it if they do it. But
Hop would be a good guy because he's technically running the same offense there that the Niners run in some ways with the Rams that they are with the 49ers. So, I mean, how different is the verbiage? How different is the plays?
I totally agree with you and whomever said it about Hopkins being old. He is 32, but man, I'd rather see DeAndre Hopkins on the field than Ronnie Bell.
Yeah, I know.
So
that's saying a lot about Ronnie Bell, how bad he is. Real quick, and then we're going to leave.
Yeah.
I saw somebody post something that they think the Niners should have a veteran quarterback behind Brock Purdy. Someone like a Joe Flacco. I kind of feel that would be a really good thing for him if he had somebody that was behind him that could help him, look at defenses, look over things when he's on the sideline. I mean, I know him and Greasy do that, but
the
Niners don't really have anybody behind him that you could say like he's like an old dog, who's done it and has maybe a different perspective and a different set of eyes to look at things that maybe Brock isn't seeing. I'm surprised the Niners have never did that. Like, maybe it's probably a salary cap thing more than anything.
I mean, and if we're saying veteran, I mean, we're talking more accomplished veteran, right? Because Dobbs has been in the league for what, like 6, 7 years?
Yeah, I'm talking. Yeah, it would be a guy. It would be a guy like if someone like Fitzpatrick was still in the league. He might not have been as great of a starter, but he had some good stretches. Just someone who could sit back there and be like, "Yo, what are you seeing out there? What are you seeing?" And then you could be like, "Hey, so in the, and just we don't know what goes on the sideline."
And another comparable, Andy Dalton. He got benched again by Carolina. I'm not sure if he's a free agent next year, but someone who's had success, he could step in and win. He's seen a lot. So more of like the grizzled veteran type of approach.
What do they call him? The Red Rocket or something?
Yeah, but it probably is a money thing because I think Dobbs only had like a $2.5 million contract. Who knows what Flacco got he's with the Colts now, right? And he's probably going to be a free agent again because teams just don't want him. He comes in and wins, gets the Browns to the playoffs. We don't want you. Colts, they still keep trying to start Richardson, even though Flacco's winning. So he'll probably be gone. Flacco might not be. Flacco and Dalton might be real possibilities.
Richardson to me is if the Niners would have stuck with Trey Lance because he has all these traits. mean, he's got traits. He's fast. He's got a strong arm. That's what Richardson looks right now. He's looking like a guy who a team is banging their head against the wall, trying to prove that they made the right draft pick.
Yep.
And it just isn't working. And that to me is what Richardson is. He is essentially Trey Lance if he actually would have played.
He's more athlete than quarterback, and Trey Lance, I guess, was more athlete than quarterback too. But just you got to be a quarterback. Got to be quarterback.
Yeah,
first.
this is the National Football League. You need to be a quarterback to play quarterback. You're not a running back. You're not a wide back. This is the National Football League. You got to be able to hit your back foot, make a quick read, and throw the ball. That's what this league is predicated on. It's cool to have all those other traits where you can move around and make plays, but in the end, when you need to win a game in a Super Bowl, you need a guy like a Montana, like a Brady, like a Mahomes in a different way, who can make a play either with their legs or from the pocket. And
you got to win from the pocket first. Everything else is gravy and awesome, but you got to win from the pocket.
Yep. I think that pretty much wraps it up. This is definitely more of an animated stream than I had yesterday because I had a chance to sit on what I said yesterday, and I'm like, that sucked. So,
and I'm not optimistic. If I raised your spirits at all, good for me, because I'm not I'm a glass half empty type of person.
I'm super not optimistic still, but I mean, it is the Cowboys, so who knows? Anybody who was in the chat tonight, I know it was kind of a quiet chat. Appreciate it very much. I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with Raj, and Thursday with Bashar of 49er Minded. And I think next week, if things work out, me and Al will be back on our normal 8 p.m. Eastern Thursday.
Yep.
Everybody have a great rest of your
thanks all
Tuesday evening, and I will see you tomorrow. Al will probably see you. When's your next video that you're putting up?
Sometime Thursday. It'll be a preview show for Dallas and any absurd news that the Niners have going on.
There you go. All right, everybody, take care. Peace out.
Have a good night.
Oop, I almost hit the wrong one. I went end stream instead of leave website. Hold on.